And I know that, he spent 15 days in North Platte. We had 17 days total in the hospital. And I think probably parents here, when you don't know if your son's going to make it, how do you sleep? I think we had our daughter back home. We were trying to still take care of the church, our business, driving back and forth. And I think I counted up 5 nights of sleep in 17 days. You know, a lot of people are like, well, how did you miss the things Colton was trying to say? Because we were just we were exhausted. We were fatigued to a level we've never ever been in our lives since or, after that. And but I do remember when the doctor came in that day because, he said, there's nothing else we can do. We have to send him to a children's hospital. There was 30 inches of snow in Denver that night. And Denver was the closest children's hospital. And that's when Sonia she hit the ground. I was so mad at her. I can't do it anymore. You better get up, we were just about ready at that point to just, I don't know, yeah. We were beyond exhausted. And the doctor said, well, this would be a good sign. And that night, God led Colton's bowels and everything to work, and you name it. And we had you've been in hospitals before, you hit that nurse button and no one ever shows up, and like, this thing's broken, and you go out there and you're all sitting there drinking coffee at the nurse's lounge, We had that many times. But that day that Colton got better, they were just all standing in our room. I mean, they were all just sitting there just looking at him. We couldn't get rid of him. Okay, he's better now. You can leave, And they were just stunned. And I'll never forget the nurse that pulled me aside and said, Mr. Burble, could I talk to you for a little bit? So she pulls me to a little lounge area and says, I don't know if I believe in God or not, but this is a miracle. We don't know why your son's better. And I'll never forget that. So when we left the hospital, we knew that we had an answer to prayer. We just didn't realize how big.
So would you chalk that up to the supernatural? Tell us more about the events that unfolded that could be explained no other way.
Well, he would say things, like even in the hospital, that first night he looked at me and said, Dad, you almost died. Now, he was trying to talk to me about what he'd seen right then, but I changed the subject because he was struggling, and I was begging him not to quit and keep fighting for so long. I thought that if I talked about death with my 3-year-old, he'd think it was okay to quit. And it scared me. As a parent, you brace yourself for like the sex talk, maybe drugs. But I was not prepared to talk to my 4-year-old about dying. They're supposed to make it to 4. And I was so scared, I changed the subject. He said other things. He was in trouble at home once. I remember him saying, yeah, Jesus told me I had to be nice. And I'm like, well, yeah, you better listen, Wow, he's on my side here, And I'm sitting here thinking, what, a Sunday school teacher's doing a really good job. And things like that would happen. But we talked about Jesus. We'd have prayer time, Bible study in our house. And so his comments about Jesus really didn't wake us up either. But it was 4 months later, we're driving back through North Platte, and we kind of say, well, we're going to go back to the hospital. And like a very good, faithful little brother, oh no, send my older sister Cassie. I don't want to go send her, And sibling rivalry is still alive and well in my house. And but he goes, but Dad, the angels, they sang to me while I was there. And then that's all of a sudden I looked at my wife, because we don't talk about angels all the time. And here's my black and white serious kid introducing something that we normally don't discuss. And that's when I looked at her and she looked at me and we're like, has he talked to you about angels before? Hadn't said anything to me. And that's when we finally woke up, if you will, as parents. And we were like, okay, we missed something. And I remember that first thing, a lot of people ask me, like, how do you feel about cynics and doubters? And I go, I was right there with them. I wasn't ready to talk to them. I mean, you can look in the Bible, and how many of you think those miracles are going to happen to you? Yeah, even if you believe in them and you have faith. I was like, my kid, yeah, right, And so I'm sitting there going, Colton, when did this happen? He said, well, my Dr. O'Halloran was working on me. And that's when he said something that totally caught me off guard. He said, but Dad, while he was working on me, I was up above and I could see you, and you were in a room praying by yourself. Now, I don't know about you guys, but my wife already mentioned it earlier. I think probably one of our biggest problems is pride. And I don't know how many dads here struggle with that, but this one did. And to be honest, he still does every now and then. But you know, as a dad, I always wanted to provide and protect my family. Isn't that what dads are supposed to do? And in that hospital, I wasn't able to work. I had a broken leg for a long time. I had a cancer scare. I had kidney stones. My independence, if you will, for providing for my family was gone, and we were financially in the worst shape I've ever been in my life. That was embarrassing. It was humiliating. And then, when my son is screaming for me, Dad, why aren't you doing anything, Dad? Dad, make them stop. They're hurting me. Dad. I was so upset. I couldn't protect my son. It's like everything about my masculinity was just completely ripped out of me. And as a man, you know, I wanted to be strong for my wife. I didn't want to show my fear to my son. And to make it especially worse for me, I'm a pastor. You know, in churches, I've seen that when laymen blow it, people have grace and forgive laymen because they're just laymen, okay? But as pastors, we don't usually get forgiveness from church people. We're supposed to be better than thou, holier than them. And I don't know, this pastor is a normal guy that has normal issues and normal problems just like the rest of you men, and I just like to tell my church people to get over themselves, okay? But I'm not there and I'm sick. But the truth is, we don't have the luxury of blowing it publicly like you do. And when I went in that room and shut the door, and I remember pulling those curtains, I didn't tell my wife about that. I didn't go tell her about what I just did and how I let God have it and what I said to him. And here's my son saying, Dad, I saw you, and this is where you were, and I saw you in there praying. And I'm like, you did? And then he could follow that up, and I saw Mom in another place. And I'm sitting here like, you know, if my son is making this up, how's he getting all the details right? I mean, the surgeon in the operating room couldn't have told me that. The nurses in there couldn't have. My wife couldn't have told me where I was and what I was doing. But here my son that was in surgery could. I didn't have any earthly explanation for that. And that's when we were like, something happened. Really, I mean, it had to have happened. And that's when we finally started listening to our kid.
That's awesome. No, I think that really jumped out to me because we pray so much for needs in this body. And sometimes you get a little cynical, sometimes you get a little passive, like people saying, if you say, I'll pray for you, you get a little chuckle, like, well, that'd be nice, you know. And it's kind of like, prayer is kind of like either the last resort or it's kind of like below all the other options that we have today. So you hear Colton say that he saw you praying, and you said, that prayer? That was my worst prayer. I was angry at God. Okay, so Sonia, why don't you tell us maybe some things or something that most surprised you in all of this?
I think probably what's most surprised or brought most comfort was when he told us about the daughter, which we didn't know at the time we miscarried. I think miscarriage is like a silent hurt you can't share with people, and we're finding out more so back in the day. I mean, even now. I think that probably shocked us the most. That was probably one of our deepest hurts before this. We miscarried on Father's Day weekend, which was probably, it's rough anyway. But Father's Day weekend made it worse because we were getting ready to announce to the church that we're pregnant with number 2. And I stayed home that day, sending him to church. And I was home with my daughter, Cassie, because we had her, and this was in a fetal position, just wondering what I did wrong, what I did wrong. Felt like a failure. And so when he said that he saw his sister, I knew everything was okay. She was fine. Jesus is taking care of her. She's in good hands, and she's waiting for us. And that's just an awesome feeling. I think it's another reason why we love the book. God spoke to us and said, you have this comfort, and we do. We're still sad we didn't get to see her, hold her, but we have the assurance that we're going to see her one day, and we'll get to hug her. We're sad about that, but we have the assurance we'll get to see her. And God spoke to both of us and says, you have that peace. You've got to share it. It's kind of like we all have Jesus. We need to be sharing Jesus. And I think with some of our hurts in our lives, we get stuck in that fetal position. And when we stay in that fetal position, Satan wins. Satan wants us to stay in that fetal position, whether it's through alcoholism, loss of a job, everybody has hurts. Everybody has them. Miscarriage is just one of many hurts. But if you stay in that fetal position and just remain hurt, it doesn't help anybody. And that's what you need to do is pray through it, talk to other people, whatever it is you need to do, worship. Get past that so you can heal, so you can help others. Because if you can help others, Jesus wins, not Satan. And we need to get past that hurt. We still have that hurt, but we can share that hurt with others to help